Hi, I'm Bob Larson, author of Arranging for the Small Jazz Ensemble. Thanks for watching this video. Today I'm going to be talking about secondary dominants. These are real important for jazz arrangers to understand their function and why we use them and how we use them. What I'm doing with these latest videos is sort of playing catch up and talking about some jazz theory concepts that I didn't have the space to include in the book. I'm going to go through some handouts and do some examples. Looking at this document here, it says secondary dominants. What are they? So they are a chord whose function belongs, and notice I bolded function because that's talking about where it's moving and the fact that it does want to move, belongs more closely to a key other than the main key of the passage. That's from the Koska Payne theory book. They are dominants of diatonic chords other than the tonic. Okay, so to transform these chords into dominant sevenths, accidentals must be introduced to match the key of the moment, that is the key of the chord that is being approached. And we use the word tonicized in that way. Why use them? They provide more dissonance, specifically because of the tritone that is formed between the third and seventh of a dominant seventh chord. That's very dissonant, and it says, it's underlined here, this is actually right from the book, dissonant chords tend to drive the music forward toward a resolution, and what we want to do is our music needs to have momentum, and this is how we get momentum. Here I have all the diatonic chords of B flat major, and this is simply moving right up the scale, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the chord qualities, B flat major seventh and E flat major seventh, are the major sevenths of the key. 2, 3, and 6 are minor sevenths. 7 is a half diminished, or a minor 7 flat 5, and F7 is the tonic of the key. The dominant of the key. And we're going to talk about putting other dominants elsewhere. Make sure I got that right. Diatonic chords of B flat now moving by falling fifths, which of course is a very common way that music moves. So what I did is I have a 1 chord here and I work backwards. 5, 2, 6, 3, and 7. Now going forward, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And then notice I have 4 on the other side of the 1 chord, and that's how we would fall into a 4 chord. Below this I'll have a progression similar to this, but I'm going to transform each of these chords into dominants, obviously except for the 5 chord, which is already a dominant. So what happens is they become fives of the next chord as the progression moves around the circle. Okay, and there's a symbol that looks like this, 5 slash and then whatever chord you're going to. So it looks like this. So there's the, sorry, I'll make this bigger so we can see both of them. So here's the A minor 7 flat 5, D minor 7th, G minor 7th, C minor 7th, F7, B flat, and E flat. And below I have, if we turn them into dominants, you will see that the A7, the A minor 7 flat 5, has been turned into an A7. Well, that's going to be the 5 of the D minor, which is 3 in the key of B flat major. So the symbol is 5 of 3. If the 3 chord is transformed into a dominant 7th, that becomes the 5 of G. Goes to G minor 7th here, or if we and then if we turn the G minor 7th into a G7, that's the 5 of 2. That moves to a C minor, which is 2. If we turn the C minor 7th into a C7, that's the 5 of 5, goes to the 5. And of course here I'm showing you just going to the 1 chord. And if the 1 chord is transformed into a dominant 7th, that's called the 5 of 4, and here it's moving to 4. So this chart really shows how it moves around the circle. Okay, in a moment I'll go through a very familiar chord progression, and we'll do some musical examples. Okay, well I have on the screen now a progression that should look familiar. It's a 2-5-1, and it's in the key of B flat. And notice it's a little 4-bar phrase here. And so it would sound like this. But great to have a chord right here, which is what we're going to talk about in a second. I'm going to go ahead and put the voicings in here. So what I've done is I've used root, third, fifth, and seventh for each chord, and I've put the thirds on the bottom. Okay, and what move that over a little bit. There we go. What you'll recall from the book on page 78, this is the chord tone substitution chart, and this is where I divided the chart horizontally into where we add a ninth, a 13th, or 6th, or an 11th, or a 4th, and then here are the chord qualities. Okay, so I've talked about this in previous videos. So what we want to do is we want to put a ninth on every chord. It says here, ninth can replace the root in all chord qualities. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I hope it all works out here. So there's the D, which is the ninth of C. And then I'm going to take this F and move it up to G. Now I'm going to take this B flat and move it up to C. Okay. The other thing I'd like to do is look at the dominants, which, as we know, are commonly substituted, where we commonly substitute the 13th. Okay. 13ths can replace the 5th in major and in dominant 7ths. Very common in dominants because we want that to be a dissonant chord. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 5th and move it up to the 13th. So now I'm happy with my 2-5-1. What I'm not happy with is I'd love to have a chord in here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 6th chord, because if this progression loops back here to the 2, which is very common, I'd like to have a falling 5th chord progression, and a G is 5 above C. So I'm going to go ahead and put a G minor 7th. I'll go ahead and label it. And so now we have a chord progression that sounds like this. And it would loop back and have a repeat sign, but that's presumably what we would do here. So go ahead and call it a 6. All right, well, this is where it'd be wonderful if we could go ahead and transform this chord into a secondary function. So because it's a falling 5th progression, the G back to the C, I'd love to turn this into a dominant 7th. Well, how do I do that? Well, I turn it into a dominant by raising the 3rd. I knew that was going to happen. I'm just going to go like this. Okay, so now I have, instead of a 6 chord, I have a G7. I change the name, the Roman numeral, to the secondary dominant symbol, which is 5 of 2. Okay, final step is making sure that we use the correct chord tone substitutions, and this is really the most important thing I'm going to talk about. I'll ask students to do this, and I'll say, okay, let's put a 6 chord, let's make it into a dominant of the 2. Now let's make the, and I usually just say, let's make the chord sound better. And so what the first thing they do is they put a 9th in, because they know they're supposed to use 9s, and then they know it's a dominant, so they want to put a 13 in. So this is their first instinct, is to do this, and I need to just for the sake of time, because sometimes moving notes around in finale is a hassle. So I've moved the G up to A, I've moved the D up to E. So now I've used these subs that are in this the chart on this in the book. The problem with this is in the wrong key, because we need to make sure we're in what we call the key of the moment. This chord has to be in this key, in C minor. So what I want to refer to is this came up on the screen a few times. I have an error here. There. This is a C harmonic minor scale. This is what I'm thinking of as I arrange, as I improvise using this chord. So what do I need to do? I need to put a flat 9 in. Put a flat 13 in. This chart didn't tell me to do that. It did say that I can use flat 13s on dominants. I can use flat 9s on dominants. Notice I can also use sharp 9s. So I actually could change this. I'm not going to do it, but I could actually change this A flat into an A sharp. Okay? So now it sounds like this. On the B flat. Okay? So, to summarize, if a secondary dominant is labeled without alterations or extensions, which that's usually the case, it says use the alterations that reflect the key of the target chord. I have got to be in the key of C minor right here. This is maybe the most common mistake I'll see. In other words, I'll see sometimes people when they're improvising will think Mixolydian mode because they see a dominant seventh. Well, that's not correct. You need to play in the key of C minor right there. And also when you're arranging, you need to obviously keep that in mind. Three other things. Remember that dominant sevenths and diminished sevenths share the same function, as in 5 goes to 1, but so does 7 diminished seventh. They both contain a leading tone. Diminished sevenths can also serve as secondary chords in their secondary diminished seventh chords. So they would be called 7/ and then whatever chord number you're going to. Also, tritone substitutions work as secondary dominants just like they do with regular dominant sevenths. So in other words, you could have, if you had this chord progression, C major seventh, A seventh, which is the 5 of 2, going to D minor. You could have C major seventh, E flat 7th. That's subs for the A7. That's a tritone sub. You can also have the 2 chord that goes with the tritone sub, C major 7th, and then these 2 chords will take the place of the A7. This is a 2/5. It sounds like this. Here's the C, A7, D minor, G. Now I'll use C, E flat 7, D minor, G, and now C major. Now here's the 2/5, B flat to E flat, and then D minor to G. Okay, finally, there's a reharmonization technique that we call backcycling, where a chord serves as a target and a series of dominant sevenths go through the falling fifths until the target is reached. So the example below here, if we had a C chord, it doesn't have to start this way, but if we had a C major seventh for a beginning chord and an ending chord, we could get to the C major seventh by simply going through a whole series of dominants. And you can see what I've done is I've gone up a half step from the C to the C sharp 7, and then going around the circle gets us to C again. So it sounds like this. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that helps. And thank you for watching the video, and there'll be more to come. Thank you.